It was supposed to be a regular walk home. Tanya's sneakers were soaked from the puddles. Her school bag hung low, dragging her hoodie down as the cold wind pushed against her face. But what made her stop wasn't the rain. It was the sound of something being dragged. Across the road, a white farmer in muddy overalls yanked a rope tied around a limp German shepherd's neck. The dog's leg looked broken. His ribs stuck out. His fur was matted with blood and dirt. He didn't bark, didn't whimper, just existed. The man stopped at the edge of a ditch and kicked the dog down like he was tossing trash. People passed by in cars. Some slowed. Nobody stopped. Tanya didn't move. Her chest tightened. She crossed the road. "Sir, what's wrong with him?" she asked, her voice quiet. The man didn't look at her, just spat near her sneakers. "Damn mutt's useless. Hurt his leg. Can't guard nothin'," he grunted. "Take him if you want. $5, or he stays where he belongs." Tanya reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out 5 wrinkled dollar bills, saved from sweeping porches, returning cans, pocket change she never spent. Her hand trembled as she held it out. The man snatched it and muttered, "Take the cursed mutt, then. He's your problem now." Tanya didn't flinch. She stepped carefully into the ditch, knelt beside the dog. His body shivered under the cold drizzle, but when her fingers brushed his fur, he didn't pull away, just blinked, slow and heavy, as if asking why. She slid off her jacket and gently wrapped it around him, lifted his chin. "You're coming with me," she whispered. The dog didn't resist. He stood, weak, wobbly, but willing, and followed her like they'd known each other for years. A car drove by. Someone stared. Tanya didn't care. That moment, soaked in rain and silence, was the start of something no one could have predicted. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story. But somehow, she knew he mattered. And no one, not even the man who tossed him away, was going to tell her otherwise. By the time Tanya reached home, her arms were sore from steadying the dog's weight. Her grandma stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyes narrowing at the muddy trail behind them. "Girl, what is this?" she asked, her voice sharp but tired. Tanya didn't answer right away. She just looked down at the soaked creature leaning against her leg, eyes barely open. "I paid $5 for him," Tanya said quietly. "No one else would." Her grandma stepped forward, took one look at the dog's ribs, and sighed. "You can't save everything that's broken, Tanya." "I'm not trying to save everything," she whispered. "Just him." After a long pause, her grandma opened the shed door and said, "One night. That's all I'm giving." Tanya nodded. Inside the shed, she laid out old towels, placed a tin bowl with water, and gently helped him lie down. She sat beside him, her knees tucked under her chin. The dog didn't move, just stared at the shadows on the wall. Tanya pulled out a half-eaten piece of cornbread from her pocket, broke it in half, set it in front of him. He didn't touch it. She tilted her head, studying his face. One ear twitched. One eye followed her movement. "I think I'll call you Shadow," she whispered. The name just came to her, and somehow it fit. She stayed with him for hours, talking about things no one ever asked her about. School, her mom who never called, how the white kids on the bus laughed when her shoes were taped, how sometimes she just wanted to disappear. Shadow didn't bark, didn't blink, just listened. And that night, for the first time in weeks, Tanya slept with a sense of peace, right there on the cold wooden floor of the shed, her hand resting gently on Shadow's side. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, something quiet and sacred had begun. A girl forgotten by the world had just found something, or someone, that made her feel seen. It started with small things. The next morning, Tanya opened the shed door and found Shadow sitting upright, alert. He didn't wag his tail, but his eyes followed her, sharper than before. She smiled. "Morning, soldier," she joked. He blinked once. No reaction. Later that day, a siren wailed in the distance. Tanya barely noticed it, but Shadow's ears perked. He stood up slowly, body stiff, gaze focused in the siren's direction. When it faded, he sat back down, but not like a dog, like a guard who had just completed a check. That night, she dropped a tin bowl by accident. The loud clang echoed in the shed. Before Tanya could even blink, Shadow jumped in front of her, standing between her and the noise, his head low, muscles tense. She froze. "It's okay. It's just a bowl," she whispered. He stayed there for another second, then backed off and laid down again. The next evening, her uncle came by to drop off groceries. A former Marine with a sharp eye, he peeked into the shed, curious. "That your mutt?" he asked. Tanya nodded proudly. "His name's Shadow." The uncle crouched beside him, careful not to startle. Then, as a joke, he pointed his finger like a gun and said, "Bang!" Without hesitation, Shadow dropped to the ground and played dead. The uncle didn't laugh. He stood up slowly, his voice low. "That's not a regular dog, Tanya. That boy's been trained." She looked at Shadow again. Really looked. The silence. The way he moved. Maybe he had a past, a purpose, a life before her. And maybe, just like her, he'd been left behind. She reached out, rested her hand on his back. "Whatever you were before," she said softly, "you're safe now." And for the first time, Shadow exhaled like he believed it. It was a Saturday afternoon when Tanya decided to get Shadow a proper leash and some treats. She saved up lunch money, skipped snacks at school, and walked 2 miles to the only pet store in town, owned by a white woman named Marla, who never smiled at customers who looked like Tanya. As she stepped inside, holding Shadow's old rope leash, the shop went quiet. Marla glanced at her, then at Shadow. "You lost?" she asked, arms crossed. Tanya kept her voice calm. "No, ma'am. Just need a leash and some food for him." Marla raised an eyebrow. "You planning to pay for that? Or is this one of those wandering in and forgetting to pay type moments?" The words hit Tanya like a slap. Her throat tightened. She reached into her coat to pull out the carefully counted bills. Before she could speak, Marla stepped forward. "I'm calling someone if you don't step back." That's when Shadow moved. He stepped between them, calm but firm, his body blocking Marla's path. No growl, no bark, just presence. Marla froze. The entire shop watched. From the corner, a teenage boy pulled out his phone and started recording. Tanya didn't say a word. She just turned, leash still in hand, and walked out with Shadow close behind. By that evening, the clip had spread across TikTok. "Black girl and her dog face racist shopkeeper. Watch what the dog does." It racked up thousands of views. Then, tens of thousands. Tanya sat on the porch that night, her phone buzzing non-stop. "I didn't mean to go viral," she said to Shadow, resting her hand on his back. He didn't move. She looked at him. I was just trying to buy you something nice. And in the soft porch light, the dog who had once been discarded looked like a legend. 2 days after the video went viral, Tanya got a message from a local veterinarian, Dr. Harris, a tall black woman with kind eyes who'd seen the clip online. "Bring him in," she said over the phone. "No charge." Tanya's grandma agreed, but only if she went too. At the clinic, Shadow sat still on the examination table. Dr. Harris moved slow, her hands gentle, her voice soft. As she ran her fingers down his back and neck, she paused suddenly. "There's something here," she murmured. She pressed just beneath the fur near his collarbone and pulled out a small metallic piece, scratched and dusty, but intact. "A microchip," she whispered. She scanned it with her device. The room fell silent. Her eyes widened. Then she looked at Tanya. "This isn't just any dog," she said. "His name's Echo 7. He was a U.S. military K-9, classified unit, presumed dead after an IED blast overseas. 18 months ago." Tanya's knees weakened. She stared at Shadow, her hand covering her mouth. You're not just mine," she whispered. Shadow didn't move, but when she leaned in, he gently nudged her forehead with his. The vet knelt beside them. "He's bonded to you now, Tanya. You didn't just find a hero. You became part of his mission." Tanya's grandma held her hand tighter. Outside, people started gathering. News had spread fast. Local reporters showed up with cameras. One asked, "How does it feel to rescue a war hero?" Tanya looked at Shadow. "I didn't rescue him," she said quietly. "I think he rescued me first." The reporters fell quiet. The cameras clicked. In that small moment, a broken girl and a broken soldier became something much bigger than a story. They became proof that even forgotten lives still matter. 3 days later, a black SUV pulled up outside Tanya's house. 2 men in suits stepped out. One wore a badge clipped to his belt. The other carried a file marked "Property Recovery, Echo 7." Tanya watched from the window, her heart pounding. Her grandma answered the door. The taller man introduced himself as a representative of the U.S. military's K-9 operations. "We've come to retrieve Echo 7, he said. "He was never supposed to be in civilian hands." "He's not just property," Tanya said, stepping beside her grandma. "He's family." The man didn't flinch. "Legally, he belongs to the government." Shadow stood silently behind them, eyes locked on the stranger. He didn't growl. He didn't move. He just stared. That evening, Tanya told the story to a neighbor. By morning, it had spread. A crowd gathered outside her yard. Black veterans, teachers, parents, even people who had never spoken to Tanya before. A woman held up a sign. "She gave him peace. You gave him war." A young man live-streamed. "This black girl gave a broken soldier something no one else did. Love without a condition." The military tried to push forward quietly, but every move brought more noise. Hashtags exploded. "Leather keep him!" "Justice for Tanya!" "Echo is home!" News outlets picked it up. A retired colonel went on national TV. "This isn't about ownership. It's about dignity. That girl gave a dying soldier a second life. Taking him back now is inhumane." Under pressure, the military paused. 3 days later, the same SUV returned. This time, a different officer stepped out. Older, white, in full uniform. He asked for Tanya. She stepped onto the porch, her hand resting on Shadow's head. The man extended a folded paper. This certifies Tanya Moore as the legal guardian of Echo 7. Retired, he said. Then he did something that froze the crowd. He raised his hand and saluted her. No one spoke. Then someone clapped. Then everyone. And as Shadow sat quietly, tail thumping once, Tanya smiled, the paper clutched to her chest. They had tried to take him, but the people made sure they couldn't. 2 weeks later, Tanya stood behind a podium in the town's community center. Rows of chairs filled with neighbors, teachers, veterans, and reporters stared back at her. Cameras rolled, and beside her, sitting calm and proud in a new vest with his name embroidered in gold, was Shadow. A banner hung above her head, honoring the bond between a girl and her hero. Tanya's voice shook at first. "I never thought anyone would come to hear me speak," she said. "I never thought anyone would care about what I had to say." She paused, looked at Shadow. He looked back, unblinking. "I gave $5 for a dog that was thrown away. That's all I had. People told me I wasted it." She took a breath. "But I didn't buy a dog. I found a soldier, a protector, a friend, and maybe more than anything, someone who saw me before the world ever did." The room was silent. No coughs, no phones, just quiet. "They say I rescued him, but the truth is, I think he rescued me first." She knelt beside Shadow, wrapped her arms around him. He didn't move, just leaned into her chest like he belonged there. A veteran in the front row wiped his eyes. A school principal stood and clapped. One by one, the room followed. People rose to their feet. Black, white, old, young. And in that moment, Tanya Moore, the poor black girl who once walked home alone with a dying dog, stood as a symbol of everything this town almost forgot. Love, loyalty, and the power of choosing kindness when no one else does. She stood, her eyes wet, and whispered one last time to Shadow, "You're my best friend." And this time, when his tail thumped against the floor, it echoed like an answer the whole town could hear.